We're all observers of what is happening in China. And also at my university, we have an institute that is following very closely what is happening in China. And I must say, there are some worries about what is going on in China. And I was in mainland China 2 years ago, and even later on, I was impressed by the fear of the Chinese leaders that something like an Arab Spring could also happen in China. A kind of popular revolt due to the great problems they have. And my time is too short to explain it, and you know what the problems are. Many of these problems are structural ones, and they can only be solved by political means of compromising and trying to promote consensus in the country, but then know that will happen. You alluded on Brussels, and indeed, let's be realistic, Brussels is the capital of Europe. So Brussels is more important than Belgium. That's the truth. Perhaps if this would be a headline in a Belgian paper tomorrow, it would be extremely severely criticized. But indeed, that's the truth. And we are very proud of that. But it's also great, great responsibility. And we try to transform Brussels, not only in the political and administrative capital of Europe, but also in a place where everyone is welcome. Brussels is the most multicultural city of the country. And multiculturality is, I think, a tendency in history that will be permanent in the next decades. But the great challenge is to transform multiculturality into interculturality. And this evening, and the way Mr. Ambassador, you are behaving in Belgium, being here since only a few months, is an example of interculturality. You even are aware of what the content is of the 6th reform of the Belgian state. And the 6th reform of the Belgian state, it's more complicated than what we call Chinese, even for Belgians. But indeed, I had the occasion to speak with you about it, and I was extremely astonished by your knowledge of what is going on in Belgium. You have already taken important initiatives, and I had the occasion to meet your former Vice President a few weeks ago, Mr. Vincent Chow, but a very, very interesting talk about, indeed, cooperation between Europe and China. My last word has to do with what you said also. You alluded on the European wars, the First World War and the Second World War. Next year, we are going to commemorate the First World War. And only 25 years later, when the Second World War. The human cost was horrifying. Between 50 and 60 million people killed. In wars we consider today as having been European civil wars. But after the Second World War, we've drawn the lessons of that bloody conflict. And we have built and created the European Union. I was an intense reader of the literature that was written during the First World War on the front in Flanders fields, also by British soldiers. And I remember a beautiful poem, and I will conclude by these verses, because they are so inspiring these verses go as follows. You cannot choose your battlefield. The gods do that for you. But you can plant a standard where before a standard never stood. And that you are doing that us together. And standards of friendship, standards of cooperation. Thank you very much.